What makes a leader truly worth following? Is it the rank on their shoulders, the size of their office, or the authority of their voice? We've all seen people in power who demand respect, but inspire very little. And then there are leaders who don't even need to raise their voices. People follow them willingly, because they feel protected, valued, and cared for. That is the central question Simon Sinek tries to answer in his book, Leaders Eat Last. One of the most fascinating examples he gives comes from the US Marine Corps. There's an unwritten tradition there. Leaders eat last. When meals are served, junior soldiers go first, and only when everyone else is fed do the officers take their turn. Think about what that means. It's not just about food, it's a daily reminder that a leader's primary responsibility is to put their people before themselves. When a young Marine sees his commander waiting patiently while everyone else eats, the message is loud and clear. Your well-being matters more than my comfort, and that single act builds a level of trust no order or speech could ever create. Sinek argues that this is what separates real leaders from people who merely hold positions of power. Leadership isn't about status, perks, or shiny suits. It's about creating an environment where people feel safe. When trust flows downward, loyalty flows upward. Soldiers risk their lives for leaders who they know would sacrifice for them. Employees go the extra mile for bosses who protect rather than exploit. Families thrive when parents put their children's needs above their own. The principle is universal, and this is where Deep Dive comes in. On this channel, we don't just skim the surface of books, we dive into the deeper truths they reveal. And Sinek's message is exactly the kind of wisdom that deserves this kind of attention, because it isn't just theory. It's a lens through which we can view our workplaces, our relationships, even our nations. Imagine two organizations. In the first, leaders see people as replaceable parts. If the numbers dip, they fire employees without hesitation. The survivors feel insecure, stop sharing ideas, and do only the minimum to protect themselves. Innovation disappears, trust evaporates, and slowly, the company withers away. In the second organization, the leader makes a different choice. When crisis hits, he says, no one will be laid off. Instead, we'll all take a little unpaid leave, so the pain is shared. The employees, knowing they are valued, respond with renewed energy and loyalty. They protect each other, push harder, and ultimately help the company survive and even grow stronger. This is the difference between fear-driven leadership and trust-driven leadership. And the lesson is simple but profound. Leaders who put themselves last end up with teams willing to give their all. Leaders who put themselves first are eventually left standing alone. If you've ever felt insecure at work, constantly worried about whether your job will still be there tomorrow, you already know how destructive fear can be. When people are afraid, their creativity shuts down. They stop experimenting. They stop taking risks, and instead of working for the future, they work only to protect themselves in the present. Simon Sinek calls this the tragedy of unsafe environments, and this is why he emphasizes that a leader's true role is not to demand more results, but to create a space where people feel secure enough to give their best. He calls this the circle of safety. The circle of safety is a powerful concept. It's about building a culture where people know they belong, where they are respected, and where they can trust that the group has their back. Imagine a circle drawn around a team. Inside the circle, there is protection and unity. Outside the circle, there are threats. Competitors, economic downturns, unpredictable markets. If leaders fail to extend the circle of safety to everyone inside, then the threats don't just stay outside, they creep in. Suddenly, colleagues become threats, managers become threats, and people begin to look over their shoulders instead of looking forward. In such an environment, survival replaces progress. Think about our earliest ancestors living in tribes. Their biggest fear was predators, wild animals or rival clans. To survive, they formed groups. And within those groups, the leader's job was simple: protect the tribe. If danger came, the leader stood in front. If resources were scarce, the leader ensured others ate first. This protection created trust, and trust made survival possible. That same principle applies today, even though our predators have changed. Now the threats are market crashes, economic crises, or disruptive competitors. But the human need for safety inside the tribe, the company, the team, the family, remains the same. One of the most eye-opening examples Sinek shares is from the 2008 financial crisis. Companies all over the world were in panic, revenues were shrinking, profits collapsing. Many leaders chose the fastest way to reduce costs, mass layoffs. On paper, it made sense: cut jobs, reduce expenses, save money. But what happened to the people who remained? They felt betrayed. Their trust in leadership was shattered. They began living in constant fear, waiting for the next round of cuts. And when people operate in fear, they do the bare minimum. They avoid taking initiative, because standing out could make them a target. The culture deteriorates, and ironically, the company grows weaker. But then there was a company that made a different choice. Instead of laying people off, the leader announced, "No one will lose their job. Instead, everyone will take a few unpaid days off. The pain will be shared by all, not carried by a few." Employees were stunned, but also relieved. They knew their leader valued them. They didn't feel abandoned. And the result was extraordinary. People didn't just accept the sacrifice, they responded with loyalty and commitment. They worked harder, supported each other more, and helped the company not only survive the crisis, but come out stronger. This is what happens when the circle of safety is real. Neuroscience also supports this idea. When people feel unsafe, their brains release cortisol, the stress hormone. In small bursts, cortisol can help us stay alert, but when it lingers, it damages us. It suppresses creativity, weakens our immune system, and keeps us stuck in survival mode. On the other hand, when people feel secure and trusted, the brain releases serotonin and oxytocin, chemicals that build connection, trust, and loyalty. A good leader understands this. They create conditions where the right chemicals flow, where people feel valued, and where collaboration becomes natural. The tragedy of modern workplaces is that many leaders forget this. Instead of building safety, they create fear. They dangle jobs like carrots, they threaten with performance reviews, they make people feel disposable. These tactics may drive short-term compliance, but they destroy long-term trust. And without trust, no organization can thrive. Leadership in this sense is not about managing numbers. It's about managing the environment in which people operate. A truly great leader doesn't wake up thinking about the stock price or the next quarter's profits. They wake up thinking about their people. Are they safe? Do they feel valued? Can they take risks without fear? When the answer to those questions is yes, the results naturally follow. This isn't just theory. You've probably experienced it yourself. Think about a teacher you admired or a manager who made you feel like your ideas mattered. Didn't you give more effort in their presence? Didn't you push yourself a little further, not because you had to, but because you wanted to? That's the power of the circle of safety. It transforms obligation into dedication. And here's the paradox. Leaders who focus solely on profits often lose both profits and people. But leaders who focus on people end up with both: strong loyalty and sustainable success. Because when people feel safe, they don't just survive, they thrive. Leadership may look like a matter of strategy, planning, and management, but Simon Sinek reminds us it is equally a matter of biology. The way humans behave inside organizations has far less to do with policies and far more to do with the chemicals running through their bodies. Our brain chemistry explains why some environments feel inspiring while others feel suffocating, and a great leader, knowingly or unknowingly, shapes that chemistry. Think about what happens when you achieve something, even a small win. You get a burst of dopamine, the reward chemical. It's the little rush of satisfaction that makes you want to repeat the behavior. That's why we keep checking our phones for likes and notifications. Each ping gives us a hit of dopamine. In the workplace, dopamine fuels productivity and goal achievement. But if leaders rely too heavily on dopamine-driven rewards, like sales targets or quarterly bonuses, people start chasing short-term wins instead of building long-term trust. They get addicted to instant results, just like a gambler pulling a slot machine lever. It works in the moment, but it creates shallow engagement. Now compare that with serotonin. This chemical flows when we feel valued, respected, and recognized. Think about how you feel when someone publicly acknowledges your effort, or when your leader sincerely thanks you in front of others. That moment of pride, that feeling of belonging. It's serotonin at work. Unlike dopamine, serotonin builds stability. It ties us emotionally to the group. A wise leader doesn't just set goals and hand out rewards. They build rituals of recognition so that people know they matter. Then there's oxytocin, often called the love or bonding chemical. Oxytocin is released when trust is high, when genuine care is shown, when someone makes a sacrifice for us, or when we do the same for others. It's why a soldier would risk his life to save his comrade. It's why a team feels like family when the leader puts people before profit. Oxytocin is the glue of loyalty. Without it, workplaces feel transactional, like marketplaces where everyone is replaceable. With it, workplaces feel like communities where people belong. And finally, there's endorphins, the body's natural painkillers. They're what carry you through physical strain, running, exercising, or even working late into the night to finish a tough project. Endorphins mask the pain and keep you moving forward. In teams, this means people can endure challenges together, often even enjoying the struggle because of the small waves of relief endorphins provide. But alongside these chemicals that lift us, there's one more that can destroy us if it dominates: cortisol, the stress hormone. Cortisol has an important role. When we sense danger, it puts us on high alert. It helped our ancestors survive lions in the jungle, and today it can help us focus during emergencies. But prolonged cortisol is toxic. In workplaces where fear rules, fear of layoffs, fear of humiliation, fear of constant criticism, cortisol floods the system. It suppresses serotonin and oxytocin, erodes trust, and keeps people locked in survival mode. Over time, it literally makes people sick, both mentally and physically. This is why Simon Sinek argues that leadership is about creating the right chemical balance in the group. If leaders push fear, they trigger cortisol and destroy trust. If they create safety, recognition, and connection, they trigger serotonin and oxytocin, building loyalty and innovation. It's not philosophy, it's biology. A toxic leader rewires the brain for survival. A selfless leader rewires it for growth. Take the example of a manager under pressure. Suppose he says to his team, "If we don't hit the target this month, you all know what's at stake. Jobs are on the line." Immediately, cortisol spikes. People might work harder for a short while, but the long-term effect is devastating. Trust erodes, creativity collapses, and everyone starts thinking only of self-preservation. Now imagine the same situation, but with a different leader. He gathers the team and says, "I know the situation is tough, but we'll face it together. I'm here with you, and I trust that as a team, we'll find a way through." Suddenly, serotonin and oxytocin flow. The team feels safe, respected, and supported. And instead of fearing the challenge, they rise to it. Sinek emphasizes that leaders don't just manage numbers, they manage chemistry. They are responsible for the invisible forces that drive human behavior. The best leaders consciously design cultures where the right chemicals dominate, where people want to give their best, not out of fear, but out of loyalty. That's why leadership isn't about issuing orders. It's about shaping an environment where biology works for you, not against you. This understanding changes the way we think about success. It's not enough to motivate people with money or punish them with threats. That only manipulates dopamine and cortisol. Real success comes when leaders generate serotonin and oxytocin, when people feel recognized, protected, and trusted. That's what turns ordinary groups into extraordinary teams. There are really only two types of leaders in the world: those who put themselves first, and those who put their people first. This distinction may sound simple, but its impact is profound. The culture of an entire organization, the behavior of hundreds or thousands of people, can be traced back to whether the leader is selfish or selfless. Selfish leaders see leadership as a prize. For them, it's about privileges, status, and authority. They treat their team members as resources, like batteries to be used up and replaced. When things go right, they absorb the credit. When things go wrong, they push the blame downward. Such leaders are obsessed with quarterly numbers, short-term wins, and anything that makes them look good in the moment. Their teams may deliver results under pressure, but they rarely give their hearts. The environment becomes transactional. People come to work for the paycheck, not because they believe in the mission. They watch their backs instead of watching each other's. In short, fear becomes the dominant culture. Now consider the selfless leader. For them, leadership isn't a prize, it's a responsibility. They see their role as service, not authority. They take ownership when things fail, but share the spotlight when things succeed. They view their people not as tools but as human beings, each with potential, fears, and dreams. Selfless leaders focus less on quick wins and more on building long-term trust. They know that if people feel protected, they will take risks, innovate, and stay loyal. The irony is that by putting others first, these leaders actually build stronger, more profitable organizations in the long run. Simon Sinek often illustrates this difference with real-world stories. In military combat zones, for example, soldiers are sometimes seen risking their lives for one another, jumping into fire to pull a comrade to safety. Why would anyone do that? Not because they were ordered to, but because they trusted their leaders and their team. They knew that if something happened to them, their leader would protect their families, honor their sacrifice, and never let them be forgotten. That trust gave them courage. Compare that with a corporate setting where employees know their boss will discard them at the first downturn. No one risks anything in that environment. They hold back, they play it safe, and the organization loses the very creativity it needs to survive. Another striking contrast can be seen in history. Nelson Mandela, after spending 27 years in prison, emerged not with vengeance, but with forgiveness. Instead of dividing his country further, he dedicated himself to unity and healing. His leadership was not about his ego, it was about his people. That choice made him not only a political leader, but a moral one. Now imagine if Mandela had come out seeking revenge, using his power to enrich himself or punish his enemies. South Africa might have descended into chaos. Leadership decisions echo across generations, and the selfless path is always the harder one, but it is also the one that builds lasting trust. The corporate world is full of similar examples. Consider companies that prioritize shareholders over employees. When times get tough, they announce layoffs, protecting profits, but destroying trust. Their balance sheets may look good for a quarter or two, but the culture erodes. Employees become disengaged, customers sense the disconnect, and over time the company declines. Now contrast that with a company like Southwest Airlines. After the September 11th attacks, when the airline industry was collapsing, most carriers laid off workers. Southwest did not. They found other ways to cut costs, but they refused to abandon their people. The result? Loyalty skyrocketed. Employees gave everything they had to keep the company alive, and customers sensed the difference in the service. Southwest not only survived, but thrived. That's the compounding effect of selfless leadership. Selfish leaders might shine in the short run, but they burn out their teams and erode culture. Selfless leaders often struggle more in the beginning because sacrifice takes courage, but over time, they create organizations where people are willing to go the extra mile, not because they fear punishment, but because they believe in something bigger. That belief is the foundation of sustainable success. At the heart of this difference is a simple question. What does the leader ask first? What can I gain? Or what can I give? The answer to that question ripples through every meeting, every decision, every policy. Employees quickly sense whether their leader is self-serving or service-oriented, and once they know, their own behavior adjusts accordingly. When people see selfishness at the top, they imitate it. They compete internally, hoard credit, and avoid responsibility. But when they see selflessness at the top, they also imitate it. They collaborate, support one another, and take ownership. That's why leadership is never just about one person. It's about shaping the entire culture. And culture, in the end, is what determines whether a company, a family, or even a nation thrives or collapses. This is why Sinek insists that leadership is not about rank or authority. You can be a CEO and not be a leader. You can also be the most junior member of a team and still lead by example, by putting others first. Leadership is not a position, it's a behavior. And behaviors spread. Selfishness spreads like a virus. But so does generosity. The question is, what will your actions inspire in others? The beauty of Simon Sinek's book is that it doesn't just present abstract theories. It brings leadership to life through real stories, moments where people chose to put others before themselves, often at great personal cost. These stories remind us that leadership is not found in titles or strategies, but in human actions, especially during times of crisis. Consider again the philosophy of the US Marines: leaders eat last. This simple act isn't enforced by rules, it's carried out by tradition. But think about the ripple effect it creates. A young soldier watching his officer stand back feels a surge of trust. He knows that when bullets start flying, his leader will be the one standing in front, not hiding behind. That trust is what turns ordinary people into extraordinary teams. On the battlefield, courage isn't born out of fear of punishment. It's born out of trust in leadership. Simon Sinek also often highlights Nelson Mandela. After 27 years in prison, Mandela could have emerged bitter, seeking revenge on those who wronged him. Instead, he chose forgiveness and reconciliation. He put the healing of South Africa above his personal pain. That choice required immense strength. It would have been easier to give in to anger, but Mandela understood that leadership is service, not self-indulgence. His example shows that selfless leadership isn't about grand speeches. It's about quiet decisions that prioritize others, even when you have every reason to put yourself first. In the corporate world, Southwest Airlines stands out as a beacon of trust-based leadership. After the crisis of September 11th, when the airline industry collapsed, many carriers laid off thousands of employees to save costs. Southwest refused. They decided that no one would be abandoned. Instead, they looked for other ways to cut expenses. What happened next was remarkable. Employees felt a deep sense of loyalty, knowing the company had their back. They worked harder, served customers better, and helped the airline not just survive, but thrive in one of the toughest moments in aviation history. Their culture became their competitive advantage, and it was born from selfless leadership. Now contrast that with companies that chose the opposite path during the 2008 economic recession. Many corporations responded to declining profits with mass layoffs. On balance sheets, it looked efficient. But beneath the surface, the human cost was devastating. Survivors felt insecure, wondering when their turn would come. Trust eroded. Instead of focusing on growth or creativity, employees shifted into survival mode. They avoided risks, kept their heads down, and did only what was necessary to avoid attention. Those companies may have saved money in the short run, but they destroyed the very foundation of long-term resilience. Another deeply moving story Sinek shares is about Captain William Swenson in Afghanistan. During a sudden ambush, Swenson repeatedly ran into the line of fire to rescue wounded soldiers. In the chaos, he was recorded carrying one injured comrade to safety. But before placing the soldier onto the evacuation helicopter, he leaned down and kissed the man's forehead. It wasn't planned, it wasn't symbolic. It was a raw, human act of care. In that moment, leadership revealed itself not in tactics or commands, but in compassion. His men knew that Swenson wasn't just fighting alongside them, he cared for them like family. That bond of trust is what makes soldiers willing to risk their lives for each other. And it's the same bond organizations need if they want people to give more than just the bare minimum. These stories highlight a crucial truth. Leadership isn't about the leader, it's about the people they serve. Leaders who put themselves first may enjoy power, but they will never earn loyalty. Leaders who sacrifice for their people, however, create bonds that last beyond crises. That's why Mandela's forgiveness, Southwest's loyalty to employees, and Swenson's courage resonate so deeply. They are proof that leadership is lived, not claimed. And the principle is universal. In schools, students flourish when teachers make them feel safe to fail and try again. In families, children grow confident when parents put their needs first. In communities, trust blossoms when leaders serve rather than exploit. Whether it's a battlefield, a boardroom, or a classroom, the equation is the same. Protection breeds trust, and trust unlocks human potential. This is why Sinek says that leadership is best measured not when things are easy, but when things are hard. During prosperity, anyone can look like a good leader. The true test comes in crisis, when profits shrink, when danger looms, when pressure rises. That's when the selfish reveal themselves by protecting their own comfort. And that's when the selfless shine by protecting others. The choices leaders make in those moments decide not only their own legacy, but the future of everyone they lead. Leadership today is harder than it has ever been. The pace of change is relentless. Technology connects us but also isolates us, and globalization creates both opportunities and enormous pressures. In this environment, many leaders fall into the trap of chasing numbers instead of nurturing people. They obsess over quarterly earnings, daily targets, and stock prices, forgetting that real success is built on trust and loyalty. Simon Sinek calls this the crisis of modern leadership. Too many leaders think in the short term, while the real responsibility of leadership is long-term care. In today's corporate world, leaders are often judged solely by financial results. If the charts go up, they are celebrated, regardless of how burned out their employees feel. If the charts go down, they are replaced, regardless of whether they are investing in people for the long run. This obsession with numbers creates a culture where leaders are afraid to make bold, human-centered decisions. Instead of building trust, they cut costs. Instead of developing talent, they exploit it. And in the process, they erode the very foundation that makes organizations resilient. One of the easiest shortcuts leaders take is layoffs. The moment profits dip, employees are the first cost to cut. On paper, it looks efficient. In reality, it destroys culture. People who remain no longer feel safe. They spend their days worrying about job security instead of thinking about innovation. They stop trusting leadership because they've seen how easily loyalty can be broken. Sinek argues that true leaders find another way. They may ask for shared sacrifice, they may cut bonuses or perks, but they protect people. Because when people feel protected, they give back tenfold. Another modern challenge is technology. On the surface, technology connects us faster and more efficiently. Emails, instant messages, video calls, communication has never been easier. But what about connection? Genuine trust, belonging, and loyalty don't happen through screens. They happen face-to-face, over shared meals, through body language, empathy, and presence. Leaders today often forget this. They believe that a well-worded email or a motivational Zoom call is enough. But employees can feel the difference between digital communication and human connection. Sinek reminds us that leadership requires extra effort in a digital age to make people feel seen, heard, and valued even when the medium is virtual. Then there is the problem of distraction. Social media, endless notifications, and the pressure of always being on have shortened attention spans. People struggle to focus deeply, to build meaningful bonds, to stay present. Leaders are not immune. Many are distracted themselves, constantly checking numbers, chasing deadlines, and moving from one crisis to the next. But leadership demands patience and attention. If a leader is distracted, their people will feel neglected. And when people feel neglected, trust erodes. That's why leaders must model presence, putting aside distractions, listening deeply, and showing that they genuinely care. Globalization and competition add yet another layer. Companies now operate in markets where competition is global, not local. Economic downturns in one country ripple across the world. This pressure tempts leaders to think even more in the short term, cutting corners just to survive. But history shows that organizations that endure are those with leaders who resist this temptation. They build cultures of trust and collaboration that can weather storms. They understand that in uncertain times, people don't need threats, they need reassurance. The irony of modern leadership is that the challenges are new, but the solution is old. The same principle that held true in tribal times holds true today. Put people first. When leaders protect their people, the people protect the organization. When leaders sacrifice for their teams, teams sacrifice for the mission. This principle doesn't change just because we now live in a digital economy. In fact, it becomes even more important, because in a world of rapid change, the only constant a leader can provide is trust. Simon Sinek argues that the danger of modern leadership is mistaking management for leadership. Managers focus on systems, numbers, and efficiency. Leaders focus on people. Both are necessary, but without leadership, management collapses. You can manage processes, but you must lead people. And leading people means caring about their well-being, not just their output. In the end, the biggest challenge for leaders today is resisting the pull of the short term. Quarterly reports will always be there. Deadlines will always loom. But the true measure of leadership is what happens years down the line. Are people still loyal? Is the culture still strong? Does the organization still inspire? That's the difference between companies that collapse after a few years of success and those that last for generations. At the heart of Leaders Eat, last lies one powerful truth. Leadership is not about being in charge. It is about taking care of those in your charge. This single shift in perspective changes everything. Too many people chase leadership for the perks, the titles, the salaries, the status symbols. But Simon Sinek shows us that real leadership is sacrifice. It is the willingness to put others first, to absorb risk so that your people feel safe, and to give credit away so that others feel valued. That's what creates loyalty, trust, and extraordinary dedication. When you look at organizations that thrive decade after decade, their secret isn't a groundbreaking product or a flawless strategy. It's culture, and culture is born from leadership. A selfish leader can destroy culture faster than any competitor ever could. A selfless leader, on the other hand, can build a culture so strong that no crisis can break it. This is why Sinek's message is so urgent in today's world. Competition is fiercer, economies are unpredictable, and technology moves at lightning speed. In such an environment, the greatest competitive advantage an organization can have is trust. And trust comes only when leaders put people first. The lesson isn't limited to companies. Think about families. A parent who always prioritizes their own comfort over their children's needs raises kids who feel insecure and fearful. But a parent who sacrifices, who consistently shows their children that they are loved and protected, raises confident, resilient individuals. The same principle applies in schools. A teacher who humiliates students to enforce discipline creates classrooms of silence and fear. A teacher who creates safety, who encourages questions and forgives mistakes, creates classrooms of curiosity and growth. And at the level of nations, the same story repeats. Countries thrive when leaders serve their citizens. They collapse when leaders serve only themselves. Trust, as Simon Sinek reminds us, is not built through contracts or policies. It's built through consistent actions. Every time a leader chooses their people over themselves, trust grows. Every time a leader chooses themselves over their people, trust dies. That's why leadership is not about the grand gestures, but about the small daily choices. Who eats first and who eats last? Who takes the blame and who takes the credit? Who sacrifices and who demands? These choices accumulate, shaping the culture and destiny of entire organizations. And here is the paradox that makes leadership so powerful. When leaders sacrifice for their people, people repay them with loyalty and effort that no salary or bonus could ever buy. Soldiers fight harder, employees innovate more, families grow closer. But when leaders demand loyalty without giving protection, when they expect results without offering safety, they end up with compliance at best and betrayal at worst. The challenge, of course, is that real leadership is hard. It requires courage to say, "I'll take the hit so my team doesn't have to." It requires humility to say, "The success belongs to them, not me." It requires patience to focus on the long term when everyone else is screaming about quarterly numbers. That's why not everyone who holds authority is a leader. True leaders are rare because selflessness is rare. But when it does appear, it transforms everything around it. So what does this mean for us, the listeners and readers? It means leadership is not just something for CEOs or generals. It's something for all of us. You might be leading a family, a classroom, a small team at work, or even just yourself. The question is always the same. Are you putting others first, or are you putting yourself first? Are you creating a circle of safety for the people around you, or are you adding to their fears? Because every act of leadership, big or small, ripples outward. Simon Sinek's reminder is simple but profound. Human beings are wired for trust, for cooperation, for loyalty. But these things don't happen automatically. They must be nurtured by leaders who choose to serve. The world is full of predators, economic downturns, market competition, personal struggles. Inside our circles, we need to feel protected. That's what inspires us to be creative, courageous, and committed. That's what makes us thrive. So as you reflect on Leaders Eat Last, ask yourself, in your own circle, your team, your family, your community, are you creating safety? Are you giving trust before demanding it? Are you willing to eat last so that others may eat first? Because if you are, then you are a leader in the truest sense, regardless of your title. And that, perhaps, is the greatest gift of this book. It reminds us that leadership is not about position, but about action. It's about humanity. And when we embrace that, when we live it, we not only build stronger organizations, but also stronger families, stronger communities, and a stronger world.